The Last Lullaby. The sky above Montana had never looked quite like this before. David Chen stood at his kitchen window, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching something impossible unfold above the pine trees. What he'd mistaken for a meteor was slowing down, defying every law of physics he'd learned in college. The object, sleek, dark, and humming with an energy that made his fillings ache, descended into the clearing beyond his property line. He should have called someone, the sheriff, the military, anyone. Instead, he simply watched. The vessel touched down without sound, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a seam of light appeared along its hull, widening like a wound opening in reverse. She emerged slowly. Even from this distance, David could see something was wrong. The figure stumbled, caught herself against the ship's exterior, then took 3 unsteady steps before collapsing into the tall grass. "Dad?" Ethan's voice pulled David from his trance. His 7-year-old son stood in the doorway, clutching the stuffed elephant that hadn't left his side since Sarah died. The boy's dark hair stuck up in all directions, and his eyes, Sarah's eyes, were still heavy with sleep. "Go back to bed, buddy," David said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Is it aliens?" Ethan pressed his face against the glass. "Tommy at school says aliens aren't real, but I think he's wrong." David's throat tightened. Sarah would have known what to say. She always knew what to say. "I'm going to check on something. Stay inside, okay? Wake up if I'm not back in 10 minutes and call Grandma." He grabbed his jacket and a flashlight, though dawn was already bleeding pink across the horizon. The walk to the clearing felt longer than it should have. His heart hammered against his ribs, each step crunching too loud in the morning stillness. She was still breathing. Up close, she looked almost human, almost. Her skin held a faint luminescence, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface. Her hair was white, not gray, but pure white, like fresh snow, and fell in strange geometric patterns around her face. She wore something between fabric and liquid metal, torn and stained with a substance too dark to be blood. Her eyes fluttered open. They were violet, deep, endless violet. She tried to speak, but the words came out fractured, wrong. Her hand reached up, trembling, and pressed against her throat. A small device there pulsed with weak light. "Easy." David knelt beside her, hands hovering uselessly. "Don't move, you're hurt." She shook her head violently, then winced. Her fingers fumbled at her belt, pulling free a small cylinder covered with symbols he couldn't read. She pressed it into his palm with desperate strength. Child, sickness, help. Then she passed out. David had moved her to the guest room, which now felt like the worst decision of his life. What if she was dangerous? What if she carried some extraterrestrial plague? What if men in black suits showed up demanding answers he didn't have? But as he watched her sleep, none of those fears felt louder than the one that mattered. What if she died because he had done nothing? Ethan appeared in the doorway, still clutching his elephant. "Is she okay?" "Ethan, I told you—" "She's pretty," his son interrupted, tilting his head. "Why is her hair like that?" "I don't know, bud." "Is she going to die like Mom?" The question hit harder than any punch David had ever taken. He pulled Ethan close, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she doesn't." "Okay," Ethan said simply, with the kind of faith that broke David's heart. "Can I sit with her, so she's not alone when she wakes up?" David started to refuse, then stopped. When Sarah was dying, Ethan had spent every possible moment at her bedside. Maybe the boy understood loneliness better than most adults. "Just for a little while," he relented. Ethan climbed into the chair beside the bed, his elephant balanced on his lap. He studied the stranger's face with solemn curiosity. She looks sad, even when she's sleeping. He wasn't wrong. Even unconscious, pain etched itself into the lines around her eyes and mouth. 3 hours later, she woke screaming. David rushed in to find her thrashing, the translator device at her throat flashing erratically. Ethan had stumbled back, scared, but refusing to leave. "You're safe," David tried to soothe her. "You're in my home. You're safe." Her wild eyes found his, then Ethan's. Something in her expression crumbled. She went still, staring at the boy with an intensity that made David's protective instincts flare. "How old?" she whispered, her English stilted but clearer now. "7," Ethan answered before David could. "I'm in 2nd grade. What's your name?" She pressed a hand to her chest. "Zara." The word came out like music, like wind through canyon walls. "Your name?" "Ethan, and that's my dad, David. Are you really an alien?" Despite everything, Zara's lips quirked into something that might have been a smile. "Yes." "You afraid?" Ethan considered this seriously. "No. You look too sad to be scary." Something broke in Zara's expression. Tears, slightly more viscous than human tears, catching the light differently, rolled down her cheeks. She reached toward Ethan, then caught herself, pulling back as if remembering she had no right. "Your mother?" she asked David, though her eyes never left Ethan. "Dead. 2 years ago. Cancer." Zara's translator flickered as she processed this. "Understand pain. I understand." She pressed both hands to her face, shoulders shaking. "I have child, son. Same age, same eyes, same—" She gestured helplessly, unable to find the word. "Same smile?" Ethan offered quietly. "Yes, same smile." She looked at David, desperation raw on her face. "He dying. My world, many children dying. Sickness in the mind, in the memories. They stop growing inside." She tapped her temple. "Bodies grow, but here, frozen. My Kael frozen at 5 years. He forget me more each day." David felt something cold settle in his stomach. "That's what you meant when you said, child, sickness, help." She nodded, pulling out the cylinder she'd given him. "This plant have plant. Very rare. Only here. I search 15 years. Finally find." Her hands trembled as she opened the device, revealing a small glowing botanical sample. "Can make medicine. Can save Kael. Can save all children." "Then make it. We'll help you, whatever you need." Zara's face twisted with anguish. "Not simple. Medicine needs component. Special component from my biology. Takes everything. Takes life force. Takes—" She struggled for the word. "Your life." David finished, blood turning to ice. The silence stretched too long. "Yes," Zara whispered. "I die, or Kael never remember loving his mother." 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Zara recovered slowly, her translator device working better each day as it adapted to Earth's languages. She moved through David's home like a ghost, careful not to touch too much, not to intrude too deeply. But Ethan followed her everywhere. "Why do your fingers do that?" he asked one morning, watching her prepare something that looked like tea but smelled like thunderstorms. Zara glanced down at her hands where her fingers moved in subtle, unconscious patterns. "This means good morning. This means I miss home. This means—" She made a complex gesture. "This one has no English word. Means feeling when you love someone so much it hurts. Ethan tried to copy the gesture, his small hands clumsy. Zara's breath caught. She gently adjusted his fingers, showing him the proper form. Perfect, she said softly. You learn fast. Will you teach me more? If your father permits. David, watching from the doorway, found himself nodding before he could think better of it. The lessons became routine. Zara taught Ethan words in her language, lyrical, full of tones that required the throat to work in ways English never demanded. She taught him songs, ancient ones from her childhood, and in return, Ethan taught her about Earth. This is baseball, he explained seriously, showing her his most prized possession, a ball signed by his late mother. Mom used to take me to games. She said baseball is boring until you understand it, and then it's magic. Zara held the ball like it was made of glass. She was right. Love is like this. Boring until you understand, then magic. Did you love Kael's dad? The question came so innocently that Zara couldn't deflect it. Yes. He died when Kael was 2. Accident in the mines. We mine crystals for energy on my world. Cave collapsed. She set the ball down carefully. You understand losing people. Yeah, Ethan said. It's the worst thing. Yes, worst thing. David found himself joining these lessons, drawn by something he couldn't name. Zara spoke about her world, Xylith, she called it, with longing that translated across species. She showed them holograms from the device she carried, cities of crystal and light, forests where the trees sang in wind, oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. And Kael. Always she returned to Kael. The boy in the holograms had Ethan's build, his energy. In early videos, he laughed and played, his violet eyes bright with intelligence. In later ones, that light dimmed. He repeated the same games, asked the same questions, forgot what he'd learned hours before. This recorded 2 months before I left, Zara said, her voice hollow. He asked me who I am, not recognize his own mother. David's chest constricted. He thought of Ethan forgetting him, and the thought was unbearable. How long do you have? He asked one night after Ethan had gone to bed. They sat on the porch, sharing silence and coffee that Zara still found strange but was learning to appreciate. Before sickness takes all his mind, maybe 1 year, maybe less. She stared at the stars, so different from her own sky, yet holding the same distant light. Before I must choose? Soon. Medicine takes time to create. If I wait too long, won't work. There has to be another way. 15 years I search for another way. This is only way. She turned to him, and in the porch light, her alien features looked achingly human. You understand. If Sarah could have saved Ethan by dying, she would have. No question, no hesitation. She was right. Sarah would have traded her life for Ethan's without a heartbeat's pause. But Ethan still needed her, David said quietly. Needs her now. Kids don't just need to be alive, they need someone to love them. Kael has my sister. She loves him. We'll raise him well. It's not the same. You know it's not the same. Zara's hands moved through that complex gesture, the one for love that hurts. What choice I have? Watch him forget everything, forget joy, forget curiosity, forget what it means to be alive, or give him future, even if I not in it? David had no answer. He reached out, surprising himself, and took her hand. Her skin was cooler than human skin, and that faint luminescence pulsed gently against his palm. They sat like that until the sun rose. It was Ethan who changed everything. He'd been quiet for days, processing something David couldn't quite reach. On the 4th night, he climbed into his father's lap, something he rarely did anymore, convinced he was too grown up for such things. Dad, If Zara goes home and makes the medicine, she dies, right? David's throat closed. Yeah, buddy. And if she doesn't make it, Kael forgets everything? That's what she told us. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Mom wouldn't want Zara to be alone when she's scared. The simple truth of it broke something in David's chest. Sarah would have taken Zara in without question, would have held her through the fear, would have made sure she didn't face the end in isolation. No, he agreed. She wouldn't. Can Zara stay with us until she has to go back, so she has a family? David pulled his son closer, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and childhood. Yeah, she can stay. When David told Zara, she wept. Not the quiet tears from before, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere beyond grief. He held her, this woman from another world, and felt the weight of all the pain that transcended language and distance and species. I don't want to die, she finally gasped. I don't want to leave him, but I don't want him to forget. I know, David said, because there was nothing else to say. She pulled back, wiping her face. I need to tell you something. Making medicine, not instant, takes weeks, requires pieces of me during the process. Each piece, I get weaker. By end, I won't be me anymore. Will be tired, confused, might not remember why I'm doing this. We'll remind you, every day if we have to. We'll make sure you remember. Why? The question wasn't accusatory, just bewildered. Why do this for stranger, for alien? David thought about Sarah's last days, how their friends had surrounded them, refusing to let them face the darkness alone, how the community had held them up when they couldn't stand. Because you're not a stranger anymore. You're family. The weeks that followed were the strangest and most bittersweet of David's life. Zara began the process of creating the medicine. The equipment she'd brought looked like something between art and science. Crystalline structures that hummed with energy, botanical presses that extracted essences David couldn't begin to understand, and a central chamber where she'd eventually have to place herself for the final synthesis. But she worked slowly, drawing out each step, savoring every moment with them. She learned to cook human food, though her attempts at pancakes resulted in something closer to rubber. Ethan laughed until he cried, and Zara laughed with him, her alien features transformed by joy. She taught them more of her language. David found himself thinking in her words sometimes, his mind wrapping around concepts English didn't have names for. She told them stories from her world, myths about the crystal gods who sang the universe into being, tales of heroes who loved so fiercely they became stars, legends of mothers who'd sacrificed everything for their children throughout history. We're not so different, David said after one such story. Every culture has these, the mother who gives everything. Because some truths are universal. Love transcends. Pain transcends. Sacrifice transcends. On cold nights, she sang lullabies to Ethan, songs from her world, ancient and haunting. Ethan would fall asleep to melodies that predated human civilization, and David would watch from the doorway, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her teach Ethan how to braid her geometric hair, her laughter bright and alive. It was a terrible, impossible thing to feel, and he tried to bury it. She was dying. She'd chosen death, and he was a widower who'd promised Sarah's memory he'd never forget her. But love, he was learning, didn't ask permission. Zara sensed it. She caught him looking too long one evening and held his gaze with those violet eyes that saw too much. Don't, she said softly. Please don't. I'm not doing anything. You're hoping. I see it. You're wondering if there's a way I stay." She shook her head. "David, I'm dying. In weeks, maybe less. Getting weaker every day. Hoping only makes harder." "I know that," he said. And he did. He'd lived through this before, watching Sarah fade. But he couldn't seem to stop. "I'm sorry." She reached out, cupping his face with hands that trembled now, her strength already diminishing. "In another life, different circumstances, I would have loved you. Already do, little bit. But this, not that story. This story, I die so my son lives. That's how it ends." David covered her hand with his own. "Then let's make sure the middle is worth remembering." So they did. They took Ethan to the lake, where Zara touched water for the first time in 15 years. "My world has oceans," she said, floating on her back, her white hair spreading around her like rays of light. "But they're different, thicker, purple. This is magic." They had movie nights where Zara experienced Earth cinema with a mixture of confusion and delight. She cried at Up, laughed at the absurdity of Monty Python, and fell asleep during Lord of the Rings, her head on David's shoulder. They celebrated Ethan's 8th birthday 3 weeks early because Zara might not be there for the real one. She gave him a crystal from her world, a small thing that pulsed with soft light, from Kael's room, when he was baby, hung above his bed. "Now, protect you." Ethan hugged her so hard she gasped. "I wish you could stay forever." "Me too," she whispered into his hair. "Me too." But the medicine demanded completion. Each day, Zara grew weaker. Her luminescence dimmed. Her movements slowed. The translator at her throat glitched more often, leaving gaps in her speech that they had to fill with guesswork. David documented everything, took videos, recorded her stories, captured her laughter and her songs. He wanted Kael to know his mother, to have pieces of her even if he'd never have her presence. "Tell him about the park," Zara said one evening, barely strong enough to sit up. "Tell him his mother played human game called tag and fell into mud and laughed until she couldn't breathe. Tell him she was happy here." "I'll tell him everything," David promised. On her worst days, when the process ravaged her and she forgot why she was in pain, Ethan would sit beside her and sing the lullabies she'd taught him. His voice, small and pure, seemed to call her back from wherever the pain had taken her. "Kael?" she murmured, confused. "My little star." "It's Ethan, Zara. You're on Earth. You're making the medicine to save him, remember?" Her eyes would clear, fill with tears. "Yes, remember now. Thank you." The final night came too soon. The medicine was ready. The chamber waited. Zara stood before it, barely able to stand, propped up by equipment she'd modified to sustain her until the last moment. "It takes 3 hours," she explained, her voice a thread. "Will be painful, but then finished. Can send medicine home, save Kael, save all children." "You don't have to do this," David said one last time, even though he knew it was useless. "You could stay. We'd take care of you. You could contact your world, tell them how to make the medicine. They need my biology. Needs to be me. And you know I have to. If positions reversed, if was Ethan dying, and you could save him, you would. No question." She was right. He'd burn the world down to save his son. "I am scared," Ethan said, clutching his elephant. "I don't want you to die." Zara knelt, it took her 3 tries, and pulled the boy into her arms. "Listen to me. Death is not ending. Love continues. Memory continues. I'll be in the songs I taught you, in the words. in the way you look at stars and think of friends in far places. Will Kael remember you made this choice for him? Someday, yes, when he's grown, when medicine works and his mind heals, he'll understand. His aunt will tell him, and he'll know his mother loved him more than breathing, just like you know your mother loved you more than anything. Ethan nodded, tears streaming down his face. Zara turned to David. I recorded message for Kael on my ship's computer. When medicine sent home, message goes too, telling him everything about love, about sacrifice, about finding family in strangest places. She pressed something in David's hand, a data crystal. This copy, for you, for Ethan, so remember me. We could never forget you, David said roughly.
Also on crystal, coordinates to my world. When Ethan grown, if he wants, can visit, can meet Kael, can tell him stories about mother he won't remember. Her voice cracked. Would like them to know each other, would like some piece of me to connect them. David pulled her close, feeling how fragile she'd become, how close to gone. I'll make sure he knows. I'll tell him everything. They held each other while Ethan pressed against them both, 3 broken people holding each other together for one last moment. Then Zara pulled away. She approached the chamber, her hands shaking as she began the final sequence. The equipment hummed to life, ethereal and terrible. Zara? Ethan called. She turned, one hand on the chamber's entrance. Can you sing one more time, so we can sing with you? Her face crumpled. Yes, I sing. And she did. The lullaby started soft, a melody from her world, older than memory. Her voice wavered but held as she sang in her native tongue. Ethan joined in, his pronunciation careful, learned through weeks of practice. David hummed the harmonies she'd taught him, the one fathers on her world sang to their children. Zara stepped into the chamber, still singing. The door closed with a sound like a breath releasing. Through the transparent wall, they could see her settling into position, her body beginning to glow as the process began. The pain hit her immediately. They could see it in every line of her body, in the way her singing faltered, but she kept going, kept singing even as tears ran down her face, kept the melody alive even as the machine started to drain her essence into the medicine. David and Ethan sang louder, their voices carrying through the chamber walls. Other voices seemed to join them. Impossible, but David could swear he heard them. Echoes from across space, from a world where children were beginning to heal, where Kael was starting to remember. Zara's glow intensified, becoming almost too bright to look at. Her body began to fade, translucent, like she was becoming light itself. But her mouth still formed the words of the song, and in that moment she was beautiful beyond anything David had ever seen. The lullaby spoke of journeys ending and beginning, of love that crossed impossible distances, of mothers and children, fathers and sons, families born from choice rather than blood, of sacrifice that bloomed into hope. As the final notes faded, so did Zara. Her body dissolved into pure light, pouring itself into the medicine that glowed in the chamber's heart. The light swirled, danced, then condensed into a small vial of liquid that held all the colors of sunset and starlight. The chamber opened. The vial sat there, warm to the touch when David picked it up, still humming with the energy that had been Zara. She was gone. Ethan sobbed into David's chest, while David held his son and the medicine both, this impossible thing bought with an impossible price. On the console, a light blinked. The automatic sequence had begun. The medicine would be transmitted home, converted to data and reconstructed on Xylith. In hours, children would begin receiving treatment. In days, Kael would start to heal. David pressed the crystal Zara had given him. Her hologram appeared, luminous and whole, recorded in better days. "Hello," she said, and even as a hologram, her smile was warm. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. I'm not. I chose this. I would choose it 1,000 times over." She spoke for 20 minutes. Messages for Kael, for her sister, for David and Ethan, stories about her journey, her discoveries, her joy at finding friendship in a strange world. She spoke about love that transcended species, about family that chose each other, about hope that persisted even in darkness. At the end, she sang one final lullaby, her voice clear and strong. "This song," she said when it finished, "is gift. On my world, we believe lullabies carry peace of singer's soul, peace that stays with the listener forever. So when you sing this to your children, to Kael when you meet him, peace of me sings too. I'm never truly gone if songs remain." The hologram faded. David and Ethan sat in the silence for a long time. 6 months later, David stood in his backyard, watching Ethan play. The boy seemed lighter lately, his grief transforming into something gentler. Not forgetting, but learning to carry the weight. The crystal Zara had given him hung around his neck, and he touched it often, as if drawing strength from it. "Dad," Ethan called, "it's here." They'd been waiting for this. Zara's sister had finally managed to send a message back, the first communication between Earth and Xylith. David opened the transmission on Zara's salvaged equipment. The hologram resolved into a woman who looked like Zara, but older, her eyes the same impossible violet. "David, Ethan," she said, her translator clearer than Zara's had ever been. "I am Liza, Zara's sister. I don't have words for gratitude. Because of her, because of you, children are healing. Kael is healing." The hologram shifted, showing a boy with Ethan's build and energy. He was laughing, running through a crystal garden, his eyes bright with intelligence and joy. "Kael. This hymn today," Liza continued. "Medicine worked, memories returning, mind growing again. He asked about Mother. I tell him everything. Show him her message. He understand in his way that she loved him enough to become stars." Tears ran down David's face. "He wants to meet you," Liza said. "Wants to meet boy his mother sang to. When he older, when travel possible, I bring him to Earth, if you permit." "We'd love that," David managed. The hologram showed more. Kael singing one of Zara's lullabies, his small voice carrying the melody his mother had taught David and Ethan. The same song, sung across light years, connecting 3 lives that never should have touched. "Thank you," Liza said softly, "for giving her family in last days, for making her death mean something, for loving her enough to let her go." The transmission ended. Ethan looked up at his father, his face wet with tears and something like joy. "She did it. She really saved him." "Yeah, buddy. She did." That night, David tucked Ethan into bed and sat beside him, the ritual as familiar as breathing. "Want me to read something?" "No," Ethan said. "Sing Zara's song, the last one she taught us." So David sang. His voice wasn't beautiful, but it was full of love, and in the melody he felt Zara's presence. Not gone, not really. Living in the music, in the memory, in the space between heartbeats where grief and gratitude intertwined. Ethan's eyes drifted closed, his breathing evening out. Just before sleep claimed him, he murmured, "Love you, Dad. Love you, Mom. Love you, Zara. They love you too. So much." He sat there long after Ethan slept, singing softly into the darkness.
outside, the stars burned cold and distant. One of them, he liked to imagine, burned a little brighter, a piece of Zara's light watching over the children she'd saved and the family she'd found. The lullaby drifted through the open window, carrying on the night wind, a message of love that would echo across worlds and years and all the spaces in between. Some songs, David had learned, never truly end. They just find new voices to carry them forward, generation to generation, world to world, forever.